Welcome back to another Ladder Legends replay analysis. This time we're going to do a doubleheader from InfestedZergyZerg, who says, I have some annoying matches, have zero clue what to do on top of a 4-loss streak and 0 wins. So we're going to go see if we can identify kind of where the game went wrong, and maybe talk about some themes across the games and themes that you should do when strategizing. So last I talked to InfestedZergyZerg, I recommended him do a all-in Link Bane strategy, just to work on getting the mechanics and getting his larva spinning down, getting his pool on time, getting all his buildings on time, making sure his attack was on time, and then the last important piece is to, after you initiate the attack, ensure that you continue doing all these things correctly. So that's the first thing I'm going to be looking for as I look at both of these replays is, are we hitting all of the build-up phases correctly? Are we hitting attacks kind of on time and making good subtle adjustments to when we do the attack timings, as well as do our mechanics survive the initial contact with the enemy? So first things first is I think I've mentioned this kind of at the very beginning of the patch. I was recommending an extractor trick. Now I think I'm just recommending just a 12 Overlord, no extractor trick. I believe I've tested, and that seems to be the best. Okay, everything seems fine so far. I was just trying to orient myself here. Yeah, it all looks good. No problems really. This Overlord's being a bit aggressive. If he would have gone for like a Marine second after his Reaper, then this Overlord's probably dead. So I wouldn't recommend going this deep in, but we aren't punished for it, so I won't focus on it too hard. Excuse me. These Lings, I think they're out of position here. So let's take a look at these Lings. So this Reaper gets a bit more done. This Overlord, I typically don't like it to have it on this pillar. I typically have to have it close to this pillar, and then once you confirm that there is base and you're not getting proxy, you can come even further out and kind of get a good large vision of this area over here. Then I would like to have another Overlord. This Overlord should be going right about here, and so that it can see the Reaper coming up if it comes up through this back way like this. As soon as you if your Overlord is kind of going here, it'd probably be here right now, you'd see the Reaper, and then you make sure that your Lings are moving this way. Let's kind of tighten the buildup because it looks like we are running into some problems with Reapers. So I think, yeah, 17. Okay, this actually looks pretty tight. So let's make sure we get an Overlord immediately. We do. One way that we can sort of tighten this up just a little bit, potentially, is since we're already fully saturated on minerals here, we could just hold this drone, and then these two larvae could become Zerglings, or in fact, all 6 larvae could become Zerglings. It's something you saw Cyril do at the beginning of the patch, was making 6 Zerglings against Clem's Reaper. We're not playing against Clem, but if it's good enough to play against Clem, then it's probably good enough to play on the ladder. So if we really want to simplify our lives, I would just maybe think about making all 3 of these Zerglings, or all these larvae into Zerglings, or these 2 larvae into Zerglings, because then they'll be together faster. The issue right now, and then also it's kind of a tight timing too, but we need to make sure that we're really on top of. We start these queens. And so let's see, the pool finishes. We start the queens immediately. And then we don't actually have. Oh, we do start this immediately. Very nice. Yeah, okay. So I'm kind of getting more on board with, like, I think that I would save this larva for Ling and this larva for a Ling. So at least these 2 larvae be Lings. You could optionally make this one a Ling or a drone. But hold the larva here just so that you get the Lings out a little bit faster. So that would be before the pool finishes, and before the overload pops, you're just holding this larva for a ling. It also helps a bit too with this build because you see that as you make this. Hmm. Well, I guess it doesn't really help. I was going to say it allows this queen to start a little bit sooner, but it doesn't really. So that's unfortunate. But either way, I would make this link into so that this would help with the Reaper just a little bit. And you notice here it's sort of bouncing around anyway. So unless you're like really committed to like getting this drone to like do anything, it's probably better to just make the links earlier. The links would already be out now. Um, you would see it over here. Your lings, you wouldn't come and meet him out here, but you'd come around here and meet him. And as soon as he starts attacking a drone, then you come out with your links to attack. That would help. That would prevent the loss of this drone, prevent just all this craziness from happening. And then the other important thing is, as soon as we're off of the creep spread, we don't really want to be chasing the Reaper anymore, so we want to back off. And as soon as he goes off creep, we back off towards here. He comes in, we go, and we're just buying time to other queens to get out. But overall, acceptable losses. It's just if this sort of thing if this happens like once a game or so, once every 10 games or so, then it's probably fine. If not, then we really don't want to be paying a 2-unit tax to the Reaper every single time. So it kind of is on, you got to look at your own games and figure out, am I like paying a Reaper tax every time? So I need to like pay more attention to how to like deny this. If it's a one-off, it only happens every now and then if it only happens like one every 30 games, then you probably don't need to look at it. Okay, we have a Roach Warren. Okay, so this is not a Wind Bane attack. I think this is something that I might have mentioned that you could do. And there's a lair. Yeah, so ultimately, like, I don't know the point of this attack. We're going for very different, we're going for a lot of different techs here. We're going for link speed plus roach warren plus lair. And we're on a very low drone count we do. We're only on 28 drones. So if you're going to do something like a lair timing, then you're going to be wanting to drone up and take a third. Like, there's pretty much no lair timings that you're going to want to, like, especially on this patch where CCs are so low on minerals, that you're going to want to be, like, attacking with just a lair. You could get a lair for a queen drop later if he tries to defend with Banshees, but it's not something we're going to, like, start with. So I don't like the choice to invest in a Roach Warren and a lair and Ling Speed at the same time. And then, like, this is the issue. So this is the issue that we need to solve right now. Is despite the the kind of questionable choices here, like we have 6 larvae and we need 5 larvae. Like I back and every time I back, there's just more larvae to spend. So like because we invest in this roach board in this lair, that money means that we can't spend this larva. So we have this larva that is just also about to be supply blocked. Like we got 2 supply bubbles on the way. This is an important habit you need to break. Even if you know you're going to be supply blocked, you still need to make the overlords, but then spend until you're supply blocked, right? Every last little bit counts. So like, I don't know if like sometimes people have like a mental aversion to like getting like oh, I'm not actually supply blocked, right? If I don't spend the larva, I'm not supply blocked. Like I don't know, maybe my brain kind of like works that way sometimes, but you have to break yourself of that habit. You just have to spend to the supply block anyway. And you can say, well, I don't have any money. How can I spend to the supply block? Well, with all 3 of these things, cutting one of them would get you most of the way to spending to the supply block. And probably you should be cutting 2 of them at this point. Way too much gas. Way too much gas with like not a full narrow line. So like we need to be much closer to a fully saturated natural before we'd ever consider taking this much gas. And so like even though we have no larva now, because we've taken so long to spend the larva, and because our like resource balancing is not very good, you notice like we took these gas, we don't even really have like the money to saturate it or the drones to saturate it. But then if you also look at like our resource balancing here, like when all this larva pops, we're going to have, you know, enough for 3 roaches and gas, but like we'll have more than that in minerals. So it'll be something like we'll have an extra 200, like not quite 200, but let's see, well, let's see, 75, 150, 225. So for, yeah, I mean, we'll have an extra like 220, 230 minerals to spend. Kind of works because with supply blocks anyway, we need to make overlords. But this is another thing to consider as well. So again, the meta state of this game, like aside, like which by the way, this game is just like our plan is very not coming together, like in terms of, you know, tech timings, in terms of like resource balancing, in terms of like when we take gas, in terms of, you know, all this stuff. You know, the plan is not very coherent and doesn't make a lot of sense. All of that aside, like there's a skill you could work on that can make this plan work anyway, which is why I say execution, which is, hey, when you're making, you need to make sure that when you're making roaches, like you don't get supply blocked. Like you're in roach production mode. And so like we need to start, like we're floating right now 8, 14 supply. If you think about it, 14 supply is only 7 roaches. So we have 6 larvae right now. When we spend all 6 of this larva, like the very next like larva that we have to spend will supply block us. So like even now you should be thinking like 7, like I'm in full roach production mode off of 2 bases. Probably like 7, like 8, probably 14 oversupply is not enough oversupply. And you should start to make like 1 or 2 overlords preemptively now because we just never want to be supply blocked, right? And so if you're going to do something like this, you need to like look at like how do I like build, and here we're like this is a soft supply block. Like even though technically like we're not supply blocked, like notice we have like no larva, but we have injects coming in, right? And so when the injects coming in, they are undoubtedly going to pop, and we're not going to have supply to spend them all. That's a soft supply block. I mean, we want to make sure we get rid of those as well. They're especially prevalent whenever you're making roaches. 2 supply things start to like whenever you start to get more hatcheries or you start to make like more supply dense units, then like you're going to start to need to float more supply overhead. In this case, like he's got Hellions on the map, you've got Lings and Queens to sort of defend. So your roaches can come out and be a bit more aggressive and help escort your drone to take the 3rd base. However, this 3rd base is like we're not macroing, right? So like really, I can't emphasize this enough. We're setting up to macro, or we're setting up to do an attack, but then we take like a 3rd base and we look like we're macroing. So ultimately, this is why like I am a big fan of doing all-in builds, is because right now our plan is very disjointed. Like we're not macroing, we're not all-inning, and so it's like the rest of this game is going to be extremely difficult to find like pinpoint issues because the tempo of the game, the cadence of the game is very thrown off right now. Like the Terran could be going for double port battle cruisers right now, and it's a lot of times like the ways that we would know this is because we would be like we'd be planning an attack and we'd do the attack and he would just die because he's going double port BC. Or like if we're playing more properly, like and we're playing against a player that you know we expect to play more properly as well because we're hiring more, we would start to get suspicious because we don't see normal things from him. We don't see 3rd bases and stuff. So at the low levels, I strongly recommend you attack. You plan for some sort of attack that's going to be hitting now or in the next minute or so, and you should be building towards that attack and then executing that attack, because that would be a way to understand what's going on in the game, right? And if he's doing some wacky build like double port BC, he would probably just die. And then of course we know we might want to drop as soon as we know it's double port BC, you can drop like a Spire and Spores and start extra queens while still executing your attack. But in this case, like both sides are like significantly off. Like it's even, I would say that the Terran is winning here, but it's really hard to tell. because the Terran has no stem, the Terran has no upgrades, the Terran has, but the Terran does have 3 CCs on the way at the same time that like a third hatchery is started. I guess that's kind of normal in this patch, but like with the amount of time that it's taken, it shouldn't be the case. Like our third hatch should have been, if we were macroing, our third hatch really needed to start a long time ago. Um, we have no upgrades. Terran has no upgrades. So like this is just like this is not like I call this not a valid game state to like analyze. Like at this point, this is so far from normal StarCraft. Like it's gonna be very difficult to, unless you have a clear advantage because you have a huge army and you're attacking them and killing them, or you have a clear advantage because you understand how to macro properly and like you're making all your bases at good times and you have like a very sizable drone count and you've got good creep and stuff. So unless one side has a clear advantage, it's going to be very difficult to like analyze like what this position is and like how to improve. And so the way you get a clear advantage is you need to follow a clear game plan and you need to make sure that game plan is harmonious and makes sense. So if we're getting an early layer, we're getting an early roach warren, we need to make sure that we're power droning to a certain level, probably like 41. And then we need to like get our upgrades, get our roaches, get a big roach ball and attack, right? And that needs to be the play. And if he has like a banshee, we need to then get like something like OB speed, overseer, get some queens and a drop a lord, and like take that with the attack to help him stay alive. Something like this would make sense. But what we can't do is this middle of the road thing, because the middle of the road thing is going to create these game states where it's just like this point, this is too out there to really analyze and like come up with a consistent game plan, because he could have done anything and you could be doing anything, and like you've barely interacted with each other at this point. So it's like the band of things that could have happened in this game is way too large. So we're gonna need to you need to be more extreme, and either you need to be droning super hard, or you need to be and really playing for that like 3 base macro play, and you'd be looking at a fourth. As soon as you saw this third base, you could drop a fourth. You could drop a fourth earlier than that, but you wouldn't be planning on using it and just use it for larva. Or you could like lean into the aggressive play, as I often recommend in some way, but this middle of the road thing is going to create game states that are very hard and very difficult to understand. Okay, let's watch the other game and see if we get to a similar situation. So this is ZVZ. Just make sure we're hitting our wing speed on time. We're quite late on the wing speed. Making the roach warren again. This time, the roach warren is a little bit more, like, I guess better timed is what I'll say. We have like a full mineral line here. We've taken the gases. I would say that like you need a lot of minerals to like like actually power up this Zerg economy. So I would say try to rally from eggs into the gases here. Don't like pull off necessarily here. I guess we did like, so the first pull off is okay because we were oversaturated, but the second pull off now we're like down to 13, and so then we're 14 and then 15. So we're sort of like lowering our mineral economy a little bit, unintentionally, by pulling into gas a little bit early. So this is where again ZVZ, we're really going to want overlords here, like an overlord here and an overlord here. And then depending on like where he expands, you're gonna like come back to like, if he expands this way, then this overlord's gonna come back. Like this overlord will come forward a bit. The one that's here will come here. The one that's here will come over here a little bit. And then if he expands this way, then this overlord obviously needs to drop back, and this overlord kind of needs to stay over this way so it gets a good view of both of these move out paths. But having overlords from move out paths to see move outs on the opponent's side of the map is extremely important in ZBZ. If you have that, then you can use those overlords to reactively make circlings whenever you see circlings. However, this is why, like, if we're playing like a standard, if you're playing Roachhorn, you're typically not getting a third base super early because you just, you can't really defend. That's why in ZBZ you'd be getting a Bane Nest if you're playing like a fast third base, so that if they make a Ling Flood, you can start making lings, but you also have some lings that make some banelings to help you hold the initial wave with your queens. But the first step here is we need overlords. And like we're starting to get into the exact same issue we saw last. So we had a more clear game plan for a little while. Like a more coherent, I guess you could say, like things were more harmonious with the economy. Things were better with timed with like the lair and the Roachhorn. We still got Ling Speed, but like seemingly had like no intention of using Ling Speed, so that doesn't make a whole lot of sense. But then like we start floating a bunch of money. We get a third base that we actually can't defend. Like we have no plans to defend. Like if he does make this huge Ling Flood, like we don't really have plans. Like how are we planning on defending it? So we need to start making roaches like immediately. Like once we reach our 41, so we're about 41 drones. At the very least, we need to start making roaches immediately, but like possibly because we invest in Ling Speed, we should start making Lings immediately. Which then again implies like why do we have this roach warren this quickly? But either way, roaches or lings need to be start made immediately, because even if like we have the overloads where we're supposed to, we don't have the ability to reactively make like units that are capable of defending a huge ling flood. So we need to start making units blindly, which is then going to naturally flow into like, hey, if we have to make these units blindly, then we might as well, like, if he doesn't attack us, we might as well attack him, that sort of thing. But if we're going to take this base, then we need to have a plan to defend it, and we have no plan to defend it right now. Right now, it's just the hope and prayer method of defending, which is I hope he doesn't attack me. Not typically an effective way to defend. And in fact, we're so late on making our units, we can't even defend. We make a wall and we can't even defend the wall. So we really need to be making these units like money in the bank should be itchy for us, right? Like money and larva in the bank should be like, this is death, right? Like anytime you have money and you have larva, it should be spent immediately. This should not be I would also say like you kind of need to like get a little bit better at like understanding like timings. Here we're at 39 workers, and I think we were a little bit inefficient spending. But like before we take this base, you need to start like making like units here. So like we can maybe make a couple more drones, but like we don't have the money to spend all this larva on. Like we can make 2 more drones, and then we can make roaches. But we can't. We have the larva for 2 more drones and 1 roach, and then pretty soon after that we're gonna have larva, like even more larva, right? But the problem is we spent all of our money on a third base that we have no plan on defending. So let's make the units first, get a good unit count together, and then take third base. And then if he doesn't attack us, we can use the units to attack him. It's I would say like a B plus plan, maybe a B or solid B plan, but like it's a good plan. It is a plan that has characteristics of something that makes sense. So we should follow that rather than kind of here. This plan right now is let's take a third base. It'll make it so we can't actually afford units to defend the third base. We don't have any specialized tech that would allow us to deal with like what he can do, which is like a Ling Flood is very common. So no specialized tech. So we're taking the base that's going to preclude us from having the units that we would need to defend that base. And luckily, I would say luckily, we get punished for this game because it's very clear. A lot of games you get away with this, and so you won't understand why the plan doesn't make sense. But when you see it a game like this, you should go, "Oh, my opponent did a great thing here. they showed me why my plan didn't make sense, or why my plan, where one of the most testing paths for my plan. So now I need to go back to the drawing board and I need to readjust my plan such that, it makes more sense. And then always, 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 you know, you see units. I mean, you have money in the bank. You've reached a drone count that makes sense. 41 makes a lot of sense. Like we need to be dumping, dumping, dumping money into units. So it's like taking this third base with this sort of setup that you've done would make sense after like you've dumped like a round of injects into like roaches. You got your roach speed, you know, and then with your roaches and your roach speed, and like you've spent all your money, your injects are a long way away. You still have money left over. That's when it's like, oh, like makes sense to like make a base potentially. So now we're in kind of the exact same position we would have been had we just like not taken this third earlier, except he got to get it in and he got to get a lot of value out of his things, get it and do a lot of damage. And like the roaches are very, very, very slow. So like typically speaking, whenever you're like two bases and you're making a roach farm, you are going to be rushing a bit faster the lair, and you're going to be looking to get that roach speed a lot faster. Because as you can tell, it's very difficult to run around and defend lings. Now it's not that many lings, so like what we really need to do here is we can just split up like a couple of like 3, 4, or 5 roaches in the wall here. The rest of the roaches come over here and like press themselves on the hatchery because he doesn't have enough lings to actually overwhelm us. It's just that we need to have slow roaches and defending 2 places. But we have enough roaches to easily defend both places. They just need to like be split up. And once again, we sort of get to this game state where it's hard to tell who's ahead. I would say that he's probably ahead, but he's not taking some of his advantages. Like he's not getting his upgrades for some reason. Like he made 17 roaches. He should have started his like upgrades before he made these roaches, for instance, right? But so like if he takes these roaches and attacks you, probably he's still ahead. We will just have to see what happens. It's a lot of roaches, but his roaches, he does get the, and see now he just starts the upgrade. So he makes a ton of roaches, doesn't attack, and makes upgrades. This doesn't make sense. So like you could still be in it, but it's just so hard to tell at this point. He doesn't have any Ravagers, so again, if we had Overlords on the side of the map, we pull them back as like creep starts coming out. We would like ideally have like pulled an Overlord back here. Eventually, you send like an Overlord here. It's like you want to like see whenever it's the Roach Ravager versus Roach versus Roach phase, you should have pretty good vision of all move outs, and you should never get caught off guard by things like this. Honestly, this is probably the best situation for you. It would be better if you knew he was here, but like the situation was quite bad for you. So like in the chaos of the base trade might be the only way that we could win. But even so, like he's got enough money to start taking like random bases out in the middle of the map. He's still got more roaches than us. He doesn't have his upgrades, so if we manage to snipe his upgrades before, that could potentially be like a big advantage. But we missed doing that, so his army split up, so it's possible we could get a good fight in. Yeah, okay. Okay. Technically, we have a bigger army now. But he has 2 bases on 2 sides of the map. So it's still going to be very difficult for us. He can basically pin us into our base to defend. His army's not really big enough, so like technically I think we could win here, but it's very technical and very difficult. We need to leave enough army at home. This is almost like the situation before where we had to defend here and we had to defend here. We need to leave enough army at home that he can't like overpower our base and then like start hunting for his base with the rest of our army. And like we need enough army. Looking at the situation, because he has primarily lings, We probably have enough army to do that. Just kind of split this in half, and half stays here, half goes hunting on the map for stuff. But it's also very difficult to know that because bad overload coverage in general, and just it's a very weird situation. So like probably we could have won this. He has a lot of obvious advantages, which is like you have one base and he has like two bases on opposite side of the map with a lot more drones. So like given time, he wins this game, and like you very decisively need to start punishing. We do know he has a base here. We don't know he has a base here. We know he has this base here. So like I would start by like splitting my army up, taking over here, and like starting to punish this base, and then the entire time building up here. If we do that, then all of a sudden the game looks quite a bit better for us, quite a bit better for us, because the majority of his mind is here. If you see his like drones like leaving, then like he can start to like run and chase them because again we have a bigger army. You just need to start balancing like defense, and like maybe start adding a little bit of offense. Just kind of depends. Make sure try to get your overlords, move them into better positions so that like they can defend this base. Like imagine this is your main base. You need to have overlords like here now, here now, here now, here, maybe here. Like think about all the ways that overlord here, all the ways that he could like if you're like coming attacking here and then coming this way. Think about all the ways he could have an army try to circumvent your army and come and attack your base. You want to leave stuff here, but start to leave less and less because you're pretty sure that you could defend Lings with like less units and good crevices. And he doesn't have a very big roach count. Although his roach count is kind of sizable. So like we need to probably leave at least this many roaches. If we could get a good feel, and we might be able to get a better feel of how many roaches he had, like if we were able to like get our overlords on the map and push them more. He's not made anything except queens that can like kill overlords this entire game. So we should have a much better overlord spread at this point. But again, I don't know how much it's really worth it. We kind of start doing what I say after the fact, so this is nice. We need to continue. You need to, yeah. He's able to then. We take a little long to do this, and so then he builds up a huge force and then is able to like pounce here, which is kind of the advantage that he has. Is that if you're not decisive, then he's got much more production on his side. So like here now he's just going to keep pinning us in our base, and he has a much bigger economy. If we can't find a way to get out of our base and actually attack his economy, eventually he's going to overtake us. Like he's giving us a lot of space here. We see this with Overlord, so we should be going. We are. This is kind of good, but we again need to actually get. Here's where like as soon as like if we have overlords here and we see him like doing this, we could do another base trade where like you start sending the drone all the way over here to start making a base over here. Try to use his own tactics against him, because like ultimately we do need to get in and kill his stuff. So I'd say that the major theme I saw is like the early game build up. Like you need to decisively go for engagement and pressure, or you need to decisively be making defensive, drones and technical units needed to defend all ends and attacks on you. If you are going to be taking those extra drones, this is kind of true in both games, where you sort of middle of the road at both games. Your opponent also middle of the road of it, and then the game got very weird very quickly. So kind of think about like get to a drone count that you want to get to. It seems like, in my opinion, the best case you could do is like it seems like you're kind of leaning towards like two base roach. So like get to like a 41 drone count, make a bunch of roaches, get your up, get +1 attack, get 1 roach speed very quickly, make a huge roach ball, take a third base while you're attacking with the roach ball, and then you can be droning behind it. But you're going to need to analyze that game state and see if you consistently get in a clearly ahead position from that game plan. If you don't, then you might need to look at, tightening up the build, or, you also might need to look at like a different strategy. So that'd be my advice and my analysis of these games. If you enjoyed this replay analysis, consider subscribing to Ladder Legends, where you too can get your replays analyzed.